Hey, True Believers, England Teen here, and with me is Eric Breen. Eric, back issue Breen.
Good evening.
And of course, we've got the real Dr. Venkman, except no substitutes. And today we're going to add on to the why Marvel sucks. But in all honesty, we're talking about the whole comic book industry. We can't just pick on Marvel for what we're going to be talking about, because what we're talking about today is things that are missing from comics that we would like to see make a return. Things that maybe helped out the experience when say me and Breen were kids and Venkman was just merely a thought. And of course, things that even Venkman's noticed since. Well, you are.
I've never been on Instagram before, sir.
Oh, there you go. No. Yes. There you go. You were never a thought, right? Yeah. Forgive me for suggesting you were. But there are just certain small and just sometimes it seems like it's just the smallest of things, and it's just missing. And I some of these I would love to see a comeback of. And do y'all mind if I start off, or do you one of you want to take the lead on this? Okay, this is a simple thing, and I'm going to blame Frank Miller. I blame Frank Miller for a lot of stuff, but this is something I'm going to strictly blame him on, and that's the lack of thought bubbles. There used to be tons of those, and it would help us get an insight to the character, an insight. You would get motive sometimes that way. Sometimes it's now, granted, in the golden age, it would be, I can't believe I'm leaping through this window, and it would show the guy leaping through the window. So, definitely it works a lot when they're actually thinking something while doing their particular actions. But I miss this because now you have these big empty panels, and I've made fun of it where you'll have three of them and they'll say, "Hi, how are you?" And all of this could be done in one. So we're getting a lot less story since this has gone the way of the dodo. What do you think about this particular one, Eric?
It reminds me of going back to old Spider-Man issues.
Mm-hmm.
When Spider-Man would be on his way to a fight or in a fight, but his mind would be on, do I have money for Aunt May's prescription? Do I have money to take Gwen to the movies? Or he would be telling us what was going on in his life, all the problems he was having, all of his anxieties. They'd come through in thought bubbles that were almost, a lot of times every bit as interesting as the fight he was having. And we don't have that anymore with any of the characters. And I think that's something that is sorely lacking in today's comics.
And you get more story out of it because now you don't have to, today you would waste an entire page after the fight talking about Aunt May's prescription, not subscription. She's waiting for her copy of Boy's Life. But yeah, you would get that, and it would just add to all the characters. And you could even put and I got to tell you, they should have done this more. Put it in the villain's head as well. Let's hear what both of them are thinking, especially when you have a villain who believes that they're the hero, because now they've got someone who is out there to stop them from saving the world in their mind or in their terms or whatever it is. Venkman, do you have any thoughts on this? I don't know when the thought bubble went away. You came into power in the 2000s.
I'm trying to think. Thought bubble is, man. I didn't read that many 90s stuff. If anything, 90s, I was reading Amazing Spider-Mans, and I guess there were some thought bubbles, but even back then, they were trying to do those the rectangle blocks.
That's what Frank Miller did in Sin City.
So
he would just have the block and everything, and where we would normally get the description, where it would be, meanwhile, back at the headquarters. And
I want to say that, whenever the 80s, when he started doing the Daredevil stuff, that's when the thought bubble went away.
Yeah, that is something. So that's one of my choices. I just think that we would get so much more story and so much more value to the comic book, especially as the price is rising. I would like to see that. Venkman, what do you have? What's your first choice? What do you think is missing from comics?
Well, I'll go the motion capture as far as the movement. So you're not seeing, when you see someone jumping from a room to another room, you're not really seeing, like Spider-Man and Daredevil, whenever they throw a punch, you see the whoosh when they throw their arm. You're not really seeing that.
The blur lines.
Yeah, you're not seeing the lines come in, the movement showing, or a gust of wind comes up. You don't see the air move. You're not really seeing that in comics anymore. The only time I've seen something similar to this, the Spider-Man's after image technique, what you do, because you'd see him like Spider-Man here, then it'd be a whole panel, two spread, and you'd see them all go across. The only place I've actually seen it recently, which is weird, I've never seen it before till then, is in Black Widow, the Kelly Thompson book. Black Widow, she jumped around from, beat a bad guys, went all the way around the whole entire page. That's Elena Casagrande. I don't know if that was her idea, or maybe someone, or maybe Kelly Thompson asked her, hey, can you do this? I don't know, but hey, I'm just glad that somebody realized, hey, we can do this again. We don't have to stop doing this. So I love it when you can actually see when Spider-Man, like I said, when he's doing his things, where he jumps here, he swings on a pole here, and then jumps up here and there. I wanted to see that more. To me, it felt like a TV show.
You might remember this, but one of my favorite Daredevil covers. It starts with Daredevil, his back is turned, and you see him jump, and he ends up saving somebody, putting him into a window, and then, of course, his image is facing the audience. So it starts with his back turned, and it's on the cover, for Christ's sake. But you can follow the action. You know what issue I'm talking about? Because normally you have it right there.
I think we talked about this. It was the one with Paladin on the cover.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and it's like
it was a Guillotine cover, and there's a bunch of after images of Daredevil.
Yeah, and it's exactly what Venkman is saying. And in that motion, you see a whole story. We were on Educating Jimmy on his channel. What's his channel called? We might as well.
Comic Quirks with Jimmy.
Comic Quirks with Jimmy. We were talking about All-Star Superman, and in there we showed a panel how Clark Kent makes it look like he's falling, but instead he's actually making a fool of the guy next to him. But you get to watch him walk and do the whole motion, and it's just one panel of it. So yeah, I absolutely agree with you, because it keeps a comic book from looking stagnant and everything. I would love to see the motion. It used to make the reader's eyes go to whatever panel that it was supposed to, and you just don't get that sense of motion in comics.
I mean, you might see it with the speedsters, but that's the exception to the rule now. Otherwise, you see with Spider-Man, because remember, Spider-Man, he has that thing where he has early warning sets, so you see him move like this, Yeah, you don't see that anymore.
I think it has more to do with
laziness.
No, modern comic book creators tend to make the comic books look like storyboards for a movie. So everything is like they were photos taken and placed in sequence. And part of that might be that, they think they're better storytellers, and in some cases they may be, but it's kind of, the after images are kind of unique to comic books. And that's just another thing that, the modern comic.
The thing is, they need to understand how a camera works, because they can take millions of thousands of pictures in between each second you're moving.
Yeah.
So
all right. So there we go. Breen, what's yours? What would you say?
Well, I'll start with the lesser of the two, and fortunately, they seem to be making a comeback, and that is the Footnote. Now, sometime in the late 20th or early 21st century, whoever was in charge of Marvel at the time, I think it was him that said it, that what do you need footnotes for when you've got Wikipedia? So they just figured that if you wanted to know that event that took place, you could just look it up. Well, how are you supposed to know what that is unless you've read all the books? You wouldn't know where to look. So for years and years, if they would reference another story, you wouldn't know what story they're referencing unless you had read, a Breenian amount of comics.
Yeah.
And then at some point they just stopped referencing past stories.
And it was good to have, like, it would be, that was the time when Spider-Man saved Gwen Stacy, and it would be like issue so-and-so, the Mighty Mike Carlin. Of course, I made all of that up, but you get what I'm saying.
See so-and-so issue so-and-so, or something like that. And those disappear. But fortunately, and I think it was Joker War that started bringing him back in spades, and they're all over the place now, and I'm kind of liking that.
Yeah,
Spencer,
hopefully.
started doing that in his Spider-Man. See, to learn more what happened, or read this other issue, what's going on right now. Exact same. And I noticed they were doing that also with Friendly as well back in the day when Tom Taylor's writing Friendly Spider-Man back in 2018 or 19.
Yeah, like
Right
I
when
said,
Spencer took over.
thankfully they're making a comeback because I
Now,
think it's just, go ahead.
I was gonna say, now they are referencing things that happened 1 or 2 issues ago that you probably didn't know, but baby steps. I'll take them.
Yeah, because ultimately also it expands a person's reading. And granted, yeah, the group right here, we're not 100% on board with modern comics. I mean, that's why we're making these videos, because this is what we're seeing as a problem in modern comics. But it would expand your reading, because you would get that Spider-Man footnote in the past, and then it would be like, oh, see Marvel Team Up issue 120. Okay, well, let me go check that out. And oh, that has the character of, why don't I check out this other character that appeared in Marvel Team Up? Or you would, maybe you're reading the Avengers and it says, see what happened in Champions. Okay, well, let me check out Champions now. And now you're a fan of Champions. So it really could expand a reader's horizons as far as that's concerned.
For you younger viewers, that was recommended if you like before there was recommended if you like.
There you go. There you go. The one that I would like to revisit, and this is a big thing for me. Look, I love trade paperbacks. I've got my shelf here. I've got another one out there. I love me some trade paperbacks. I would love to see a return to individual storytelling. I like a story, and unfortunately, as we've said before, there are no small stories anymore. It seems like everything is this grand world killer kind of thing. But I would love to see an individual story. Just I want to buy issue number 5 because it's all told there. When we were doing an auction one day, Ash even brought up that modern day readers are trained now to believe even in the back issues, you have to get them in 6-issue sets, but that's not the case. It used to be where you would pick up an issue and the entire story would be right there to be told. And it was a beautiful thing. You would, your $1 or 75 cents, depending on the era that you bought it in, 35 and 50 for some of us when we first started. I
was gonna say, look at the 90s. The 90s, they were all one shots.
Yeah, and that it just made it so you could try stuff, and granted, of course, the price, but you would try it and you wouldn't feel lost because you would get all the information you needed in one story. And some of the greatest comics of all time are individual issues and individual stories and such like that. But there's also something that they had, which I'm going to skip over Venkman and go to Breen for his next one, because even though you would get an individual story, Breen, what else would you get in that issue?
Subplots.
There you go.
what a quaint concept that was once upon a time. And I'm going to go back to Spider-Man for my reference. That seems to be the name of this video. But an example, there was a time when someone sent J. Jonah Jameson pictures of Spider-Man supposedly loading Peter Parker, also in a Spider-Man suit, dead body, into a furnace. And JJJ didn't know if the person he knew as Peter Parker was masquerading as Peter Parker and was actually Spider-Man. So he was kind of holding it over Peter, dropping little hints in each issue as other things were going on. He's fighting the Kingpin, he's fighting Stegron, then he's fighting Will-O-the-Wisp, et cetera, all the while J. Jonah Jameson, and throw in a Spider Slayer too, is holding that over his head. And then he eventually, Peter found out about it in time to set up something to fool Jonah when he finally confronted him with what he thought was irrefutable proof that Spider-Man had killed Peter Parker. And
didn't he have the Prowler dress up as Spider-Man?
No, that was long before that.
Okay,
but again, that was part of a subplot because he had gotten sick and was so feverish, she showed up at a birthday party holding the Spider-Man mask and confessed to being Spider-Man, and he had to figure out a way out of it. But you just don't really get those. And if you have subplots, they generally involve the super powered characters. But back in the day, you would have subplots involving the non-powered supporting casts, and that was another thing that made comic book reading back in the
that. And I think that is a victim of the 6-issue trade paperback, because now the 6 issues tell one story, so any plot and subplot would have to do with that story that's being told in this one little box. And I would have to, we can't talk about this without talking about the king of subplots, Chris Claremont, who was confessed that sometimes the reason why his subplots went on for so long is he forgot about them. Yeah. But we do need to pick it up here. We do need to go to Venkman. And what's the final?
Well, I guess creating new stuff. I'm tired of the reboot recycling. Spencer, look at he just did half his last issue. 90% of it was reprint. It was retrace for retrace of all. He just pulled up on this. He took one more day and put it into this issue and just changed one thing out of the whole entire story. It's like, why am I reading one more day again?
Yeah, and that's been a problem. Like, didn't they do World War Hulk 2? And it's only like 10 years ago. Civil War 2, it was only like 12 years ago. At the very least, if you're going to rehash, and Spencer did do Kraven's Last Hunt again, but at least that one's 30 years ago. It doesn't need to be redone, but it was 30 years ago. You're absolutely right. It's just there seem to be running out of anything.
And the thing is with Spencer, I don't know if he's deciding he wants to, if they're going to allow him to undo one more day, which most people don't believe they are. But who knows? He could. But I'll guess this is going to be a kick to the balls of loyal Spider-Man readers. And if he doesn't do this, they're going to drop the book.
Yeah,
they're on their last leg. You think they're going to trust him again? So sorry. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Thanks for the money.
But part of, I think, why you keep seeing sequels to past events, if you go back to what I said before about the reason why you don't see your blur motion, or was that it's like pictures from a storyboard from a movie. Marvel or comic book creators now fancy themselves as just one good idea away from being a screenwriter. So these have become sequels in name and in context. They're sequels to the movies they did 10 years ago or 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And that's, that ties into why you're seeing season 1s and season 2s. They forget they're comic books and not television. And
they're
movies.
not. Yeah. I don't care what Grant Morrison calls it. Green Lantern's not in a season. It's a trade paperback, whatever you want to call it. But anyway, gang, there you go. That's 6 things we believe that they need to bring back to comics to help make them better. I love comics. I know we do this whole thing called Why Comics Suck and everything. Oh, you got another one?
Yeah, bring back women.
There you go. Yes, women who look like women would be nice. But there you go. Let us know what you think. As should we talk more about what Venkman just brought up? What do you think has been missing from comic books? And we know good writing, good art. That's subjective. We want to hear other ideas from you. Also, if you don't mind helping out the channel, going over to Patreon, to Ko-Fi, drop $1 in the till, do all the things, click like, share, subscribe, ring the notification bell, make sure all the notifications are on. Now, if you've already done that, I'd like to say thank you very much. And to all the true believers, I think I've screwed up my own ending, didn't I? Anyway, to everyone, thank you very, very much for watching. Have a good night.
Good night, kids.